Hi, welcome to Ketobiography, formerly known as Less is Me Success Stories. I am one of your hosts, Robyn Dobbins. At Ketobiography, Natalie, Shamp, and I aspire to share inspiring stories of healing. We illuminate personal journeys that demonstrate the life-changing power of the ketogenic lifestyle, empowering our listeners with wisdom while building a thriving community. Natalie, tell us about our guest today.
Today, we are joined by Hal Cranmer, a former Air Force veteran, airline pilot, and real estate professional, who found his true calling with a paradise for parents, where he's redefining elder care. He now operates assisted living facilities across Arizona, all dedicated to enhancing elder care. His approach focuses on low-carb diets, exercise, and a family-oriented environment to improve seniors' health. His efforts at A Paradise for Parents have enabled residents to regain mobility and challenge conventional care practices, demonstrating that a higher quality of life is achievable in later years. Hal, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Robyn. It's just a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you. I hope we did you justice on your intro. I think that you're
Very
so
much
much more than that. So
No, that was wonderful.
we would like to turn it over to you so that you can share your story with us today.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, my name's Hal Cranmer. I guess I'll start when I graduated from college. I went to the United States Air Force Academy, thinking I wanted to be a pilot my whole life in the Air Force. I did that for about 12 years, both active duty, National Guard, and Reserve. And then I came back from a deployment to Saudi Arabia, and my 2-year-old daughter didn't recognize me. So I realized it was really fun when I was single. It was okay when I was married, but now that I'm a father, I couldn't do it anymore. So I left the Air Force, joined the airlines, flew for an airline called US Airways, which is now part of American. Flew with them for a couple of years until 9/11 happened. And I lost my airline job with about half the pilots and flight attendants in the United States. Had to search around, look for another job. And I landed, my sister-in-law got me a job at a manufacturing company as a financial auditor, which was an interesting turn of events from going from pilot to financial auditor. But it taught me a ton about business, how profit and loss statements work, how balance sheets work, how to run a business, what's important, what's not important. And was in manufacturing for about 20 years. While I was doing the manufacturing job, I kind of rose to the level of plant manager, but I was flipping houses and buying some rental properties on the side to sort of supplement our income. Really enjoyed doing that. This was up in Minnesota. And someone suggested, one of the investors, I was renting mostly to college students at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and they suggested, hey, you should look into assisted living because your residents don't have keg parties and kick indoors and break things when they're mad at their girlfriend. And I'm like, that sounds pretty good to me. And at the time, it was the time of the polar vortex across the United States. I think that was about 2014, and Minnesota got hit pretty hard with that. We had a January that the temperature never exceeded -10 for the high for the day. And my daughter said, I want to go to college at the hottest place in the country because I'm sick of the cold. And so she picked Arizona State. My two boys wanted to go to Arizona State, and sort of the coincidence of looking into assisted living as a real estate investment and my kids wanting to move to Arizona, it all came together. I came down to Arizona, took a class. There's a lot of retirees in Arizona, a lot of demand for assisted living. And we bought some and sort of chucked our life in Minneapolis and moved down to Arizona to be with our kids and run this. Along those same lines, I've always been interested in working out. In college at the Air Force Academy, you actually had a physical fitness test every year you had to pass, and same in the Air Force. and I played a lot of sports in high school, things like that. I liked staying in shape, but I never thought of diet as a big deal. I always thought of I could outwork a bad diet. I was a, you know, I was a pilot. We always, liked to fly hard and play hard, and beer was part of the debrief, and um, going out partying on the weekend was sort of expected. And so pizza and beer was a staple of mine for a long time. And then as I got to be about 40 or so, late 30s, I came across a guy named Mark Sisson who had a website called Mark's Daily Apple and promoted something called the paleo diet, which is kind of what a caveman would eat. He had this character called Grok that, which I think is now Elon's AI guy. And, what a caveman would go hunting or forage for berries or do various things like that. Mark talked about caveman diet, what a caveman would eat. He'd hunt animals, he'd forage for fruit, maybe a few vegetables here and there, that kind of thing, beginning of agriculture, but primarily he was kind of the original low carb person I found. So I started doing his diet and I found I felt a lot better on it. I was, I was getting colds a lot and things like that. So I thought I'd try the diet I thought as I get older, it would help me work out, that kind of thing. And I saw him, he was like, I think he was 65 or something at the time, or 60, and he looked phenomenal. And I thought, okay, there's something to that diet. And he had a beautiful wife that looked great too, and she was older too. Fast forward to the assisted living homes. And when I got into the homes, I didn't know much about healthcare or assisted living. I hadn't had a background in it. So I was just trying to learn how to run an assisted living home and, how to comply with all the regulations, how to find residents, that kind of thing. But it nagged at me like, well, what do we do with the residents once they come into our home? And they're like, oh, well, you follow the doctor's recommendations and give them the medications they're prescribed. And I'm like, what else? And they're like, what do you mean, what else? They sit around and, watch TV and sleep. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like much fun. And, no wonder. And a lot of them were coming into my home saying, I don't want to be here. I want to live at home. I don't want to be with all these other sick people. And I thought, yeah, well, I wouldn't want that either. So after I got sort of the basics of assisted living down, I noticed that we would buy food based on a budget. Like my caregivers would be, my manager did a lot of grocery shopping. She'd be like, hey, look how much money I saved you at grocery shopping. I found coupons, I got stuff on sale. I'm like, well, what did you get? And she's like, oh, bread, peanut butter, and they love this ice cream. And I'm like, well, maybe that's not the best thing for them. So, and she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, shouldn't we be they're really sick. Shouldn't we be feeding them healthy stuff? And she's like, oh, no one really cares about that. So I thought, well, I kind of care about it. Now take that back. There were some diets, people who had bad kidneys disease, they'd say, put them on a low salt diet or a low protein diet, or they have trouble eating, so we have to do a pureed diet or something. But it wasn't nutrition. It was what they can't have because they have a certain condition. And it was never, cut out the sugar. Even the diabetics in my home, it was just up the insulin dose. So it made me start questioning stuff. And I did the early do your own research. So I started just Googling, nutrition, how do we get healthy? And I was like amazed by how much difference of opinion there was, the medical world compared to, what they call fringe people and things like that. So I just started thinking, well, let's find some testimonials, because you don't see you don't see drug testimonials. You don't see, hey, I'm taking trazodone and it's just changed my life. It's wonderful. But I do see people saying, you know, I switched to a ketogenic diet and I fixed this, 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 and this. And another thing that got me when I first moved down to Phoenix, I had a don't mean to give too much information, but I had a diarrhea problem. I could not go number 2 without having diarrhea. And I don't know what started it. And I felt good, but every time, like all of a sudden, and I went to a whole lot of doctors for about the first 2 years I was down here, and they gave me lots of tests and ultrasounds and MRIs and CT scans and everything. And the most I got from them was, you should take a probiotic. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try that. And I took a ton of probiotics, but nothing changed. And then I finally a friend said, well, try a functional medicine doctor, which I'd never heard of. And I went to one, and he put me on some supplements. I can't remember what they were. I'm sure one of them was a probiotic. And then he said, I don't want you to eat any carbohydrates. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, none. And so for 2 weeks I did that, and boom, it cured totally fine. And I was like, 2 years ago in the doctors, and 2 weeks of this guy just telling me how to eat different changed my system completely. And I'm like, okay, if it worked for me, it's got to work for all these other people too. So, so then I started wondering, I had a guy in my home that really strongly wanted to go home, and I asked him what he'd do to do that. So he said, whatever it takes. And I said, well, let's change your diet and let me hire a personal trainer. And I hired a personal trainer who exercised him, and he exercised really hard even when the trainer wasn't there. And I made a bet with him, if you can get out of your wheelchair and walk to your wife's car, get in it, you can go home. And in about 7 months, he did exactly that. And we went to his house, and he was walking his dog when I showed up at his house. And then we made a little video of him talking about his experience. But I thought, okay, if I can do it for this guy, I can do it for the other guy. So I turned to my personal trainer and said, how can we do this for everyone else? And he was a vegan. So he said, we need to make everyone vegan. And I was like, all right. So he brought his wife in, and we started making vegan meals. Well, I had a complete revolt at my assisted living home. People said they're going to move out. There's no way I'm eating a salad for breakfast. This is gross. I saw little old ladies losing weight, which is not a thing you want little old ladies to do. You know, I wasn't seeing any markers getting better, and we'd hired like some more cooks that were vegan cooks and everything too. I mean, I was going all in. They wanted to get all these weird ingredients from all over town that I just couldn't figure out the logistics for. So I just said, we got to stop this. Let's go back to just eating regular food. You know, let's try and get rid of sugar, things like that. But then I started going down the keto pathway and seeing about not eating, you know, thinking about my experience, not eating carbs. And I started researching how to do ketogenic meals. And about this time I came across a guy named John Jakish, who developed, he was a PhD in biomechanics, and he had some machines that really helped people with osteoporosis. And his machines that did that, he found that people who were gymnasts early in life really never suffered from osteoporosis. And apparently the pounding of your bones from doing gymnastics strengthens them. And so he created a machine that sort of artificially gave you that pounding, and it greatly helped people with osteoporosis. So I liked how he studied, well, who are the population that don't get the bad result, and what are they doing differently? And let's do more of that. And so he turned his focus on weightlifting and resistance training, and found that you have 3 ranges of mechanics in your muscles. When you do a lift, you have a strong, medium, and weak range. And like when you bench press, if you take the bar off the bench and just bring it down 6 inches and bring it up, you can lift a lot more weight than if you bring it down to your chest and bring it all the way up. Well, your strong range is those first 6 inches, then you have the mid range, and down by your chest is the weak range. And he said the problem with weightlifting, with conventional weights, is you have to put on weights for the bar that are what your weak range can do, so your strong range doesn't really get strengthened. So he uses exercise bands. So this, the further you stretch them out, the harder it gets. So you exercise all the ranges. But I'd say all that to say, he said, if you really want to get the best benefits out of my equipment, you got to go on a carnivore diet. And I'd never heard of that before. And he had a book and showed all these studies. His book is called Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, and so is cardio. So with a title like that, I had to read it because I'd been lifting weights my whole life. And so I tried the carnivore diet. It made me feel fantastic. It helped me gain a little weight, which I've really have a hard time doing. And I thought, wow, if it makes me feel this good, it helps in the assisted living world too, I bet. It was a lot harder to convince people to go on a carnivore diet. They're like, my mom's not just going to eat meat and fish and eggs. She's got to eat more veggies and stuff like that. So I kind of went down the keto route. There was also another doctor named Dr. Dale Bredesen, who's done a ton of work with Alzheimer's and actually mitigated or even reversed Alzheimer's in people. And he recommended a ketogenic diet. Now he recommends a lot more plant-based diet than Dr. Jakish there. But it seemed like everything was coming together. I'm getting stronger, healthier with the carnivore diet. This guy's recommending a ketogenic diet for Alzheimer's. I have a lot of people with Alzheimer's in my home. This makes sense. And then I did a podcast with Sean Baker, who does the carnivore diet, because we did have some people doing carnivore stuff. And this wonderful lady named Maria Emmerich called me out of the blue and said, I really love what you're doing. I want to help you. And she mailed me a copy of all her cookbooks that she's written on ketogenic cookbooks. I gave those to my cooks and said, let's start making this. I hired a health coach from Maria Emmerich's certification program, and we were off to the races. And all of a sudden I was seeing great results with people doing the ketogenic diet. And I've been just a huge fan ever since, and want to promote it as far and wide as I can, and really appreciate you guys having me on to do that.
That is so amazing. I love your passion in the way that you went out and researched for your residents. Most people would just be like, well, they just said I have to just keep them comfortable, and you took the next step. That leads me to a question. So there's no specific qualifications or any kind of necessary background to own an assisted living facility. Anyone can buy one, if you will.
Anyone can buy one, yes. There are qualifications for your caregivers and managers, the people who run it, but the owner can just be a real estate investor. In fact, there are a lot of real estate investment clubs around the country that promote buying assisted living. And you'll see the big ones are owned by private equity funds and things like that, and it's all about the bottom line. But what people don't understand is your bottom line can do better by you doing well. My beds are full almost all the time, and I'm not trying to say I'm, this great marketer or anything like that, but I have people, during COVID, I had one home that didn't lose anyone for 2 years during the pandemic for any reason. So, that's kind of unheard of in assisted living. And it's all about, when I got into this, they said it's all about heads on beds, that you need your assisted living full. Well, if you're feeding them terrible food, you've got a constant churn because you have people passing away, and you've got to constantly be marketing and trying to find them. Wouldn't it be better to have the same group of people and you work together on how to improve your health than spending all your time talking to hospitals and referral agents and sales commission people and big, assisted living locator companies to just fill your beds? What value is that to people?
And with that being said, there's also something to be said about building a community, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
if the folks in the community feel like they're a part of something, it's
Right.
better for their health.
Right. And it feeds off each other, like everyone's helping each other out. And you see families start changing the way they eat and live and everything like that. The biggest testimonial I get from my assisted living homes is that I have families whose family member passed away in our assisted living home, but still come over for the parties and everything because they still feel like they're part of the family. And I think, that beats any Google review anytime, just to see them show up at my door and don't think, oh, that's where my mom passed away. I don't want to have anything to do with that place anymore.
Yes, I see. That is so amazing to me. So that brings me to another kind of couple of questions, actually. So how many you have 3 facilities, or do you have 4?
I have 4.
And
I have 4, and they're basically residential homes that we've converted into assisted living. Arizona does a ton of these. I think Texas does a bunch, and Florida does some, and then they're sparsely everywhere else in the United States. But if you drive by it, it looked like just a regular house. But we put a whole bunch more bedrooms, bathrooms in them, and then, like I said, we're licensed for 10 in each house, so I can take only a total of 40 people at a time.
And that also, I feel like, makes somebody feel like they're not in a hospital setting. They're not just sent somewhere to, like we talked about, being comfortable. They're sent there to hopefully live.
Right.
And, their life.
Or move back home.
Or move back home. Right.
But
right.
yeah, I don't have visiting hours. Like, you can come, your family can come over anytime you want. I tell them, I want your loved one to feel like this is their home. And, if you own a house, you can have people over anytime you want. So why can't you do it in my house?
Which also builds trust.
Yeah.
For the family. And
yeah, I tell them I want to be totally transparent. You just knock on the door. We have security alarms on the door because we have people who wander and things like that. But we'll let you in. You can walk through. Obviously you can't look at other people's medical records or anything, but other than that, you can look at anything in the house you want to. We don't want to hide anything. And I'm a huge believer in those elderly people. The number one thing in their lives is time with their family, because they know they don't have much time left. And so if you rob them of that, it's horrible. Like, their health, their attitude, everything improves with them if they get to see their kids, their grandkids, their spouse, brothers, sisters, those kind of things.
That is so, gosh, I wish all of these assisted living facilities could mirror this type of a program. So how many residents total do you have? Second part of the question. Are you personally involved with each one of them? Do you know their story? Are you with them and talking with them and getting to know each one of them?
I try to do that as much as I can. Obviously, 40 people, me spending time with them all the time, I just wouldn't sleep. But it's kind of the 80-20 rule. There's 20% of the residents I probably spend 80% of my time with. But I do have residents that their families, like, I don't want you to do all those fancy nutrition programs and stuff. My mom's 85, let her have what she wants, let her enjoy food for the time she's got left. And it's true, elderly people, kind of the highlight of their day are meals, because, they're not doing a whole lot if they don't have much energy and everything. So those I'm like, well, I'm probably not going to spend nearly as much time as I want my mom to come home. I want my mom to remember me. I want, my mom to get off all her diabetes medications, things like that. Those are the one, I look for the really enthusiastic families, and those are probably the ones I spend the most time with. And I spend, I'll spend time, okay, they've got this special condition. I'll get on the internet and start researching that. What else can we do? What are we not doing? I also have an outside consulting company that's really good with dementia and what causes it and what we can do to maximize recovery from it. Not pharmaceutical kind of stuff, but lifestyle. And they do a lot of lab work for some of our residents, and we look at the labs and what we can optimize and get better through diet, through maybe some supplementation, through certain therapies, things like that. And we'll do a lot of those. And I bought some extra therapies to put in the home so those are the ones I really focus on. The ones that just want mom to be there, have her ice cream, watch her daytime soap operas and let us visit. I probably don't spend as much time as I could with them.
Do you notice a difference? And this is just your opinion. I'm not asking for doctor advice. With a dementia patient in versus a Lewy body dementia patient with the diet, does it seem to help both, or?
Yeah, I think what I notice with the dementia patients, like the diet heals their body very quickly. Like diabetes is a huge risk factor for dementia. And we get a lot of people with diabetes and dementia. We fix the diabetes very quickly. The dementia takes a lot longer. Lewy body has a lot of problems with hallucinations. We see that. With those hallucinations, we see the time between the hallucinations gets longer, but I haven't been able to get rid of the hallucinations. I wish I could. So it's different with each person. Like I have people who get better very quickly. Dementia, I've only had one person get really better very quickly. I have others that get better, but it's slower. I have some that really it doesn't much help. I find the key factor with dementia, any kind of dementia, is how soon we get on it. If you come to me and you've had it for 15 years, I'm going to help your body, but I'm not going to do anything for your mind. If you just got diagnosed and come, we can do a whole lot for you. So and I think that speaks to prevention, because if you see your mom or dad has dementia, there's a genetic component to it. They've identified a gene, the APOE4 gene, that is a lot more conducive to dementia. You have a lot higher risk if you have that gene. If you have 2 copies of that gene, one from each parent, you have a much higher risk. So, but it's not fate. Like if you see your mom and dad have it and you start eating really well and you start changing your lifestyle and exercising a whole lot and all this kind of stuff, chances are you can avoid ever having dementia. I really firmly believe dementia is a completely preventable disease.
I totally agree with you, which is why we are now hearing very often that, dementia is type 3 diabetes. And
yes,
we all know that carbs are sugar and et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes people are coming to you and they've spent 50, 60, 70 years eating a standard diet. And so now it's probably the first time maybe that they've seen real nutrition in their world. And I'm just like blown away that you have been able to crack that code. And can you tell me what a day in the life of eating for most of your residents that are on this plan?
Sure. So we get them up usually about around 7. We get a lot of people come and say, hey, my mom likes to sleep till noon and everything. And we try to tell them, well, we're not going to do that here. She's going to get into routine. And it's very rare that I don't have someone who can shift their routine to do that. So we try to get everyone up at 7. We have breakfast 7:30 to 8. The caregivers get them dressed. If it's a showered day, some of them will get showers. Some of them, are incontinent, so we have to give them a shower in the morning. And then we'll have breakfast. Breakfast usually consists of eggs and bacon, sausage, things like that. We get sugar-free bacon. It's amazing how much sugar's in bacon that no one talks about. Or some kind of low-carb breakfast. We don't have any juice. They just get water, and that's breakfast. I have a personal trainer. They usually come over in the mornings a couple times a week, or we'll do some activity. I've done stuff like bought remedial math books, or first, second, third grade math books, and have them just do math problems. Or we have memory games. We buy memory. I don't know if you remember the game Memory, but you have a whole bunch of cards and you flip them over, and when you get a pair, you take it off, and the people with the most pairs get them. Well, we went to a Shutterstock on the web and made memory games with with family pictures, the residents and their families. So they not only, work on their memory with the cards, but they also can start telling stories about, and are we starting to recognize our grandkids again, and things like that. And we'll start with, 2 pair and make it easy. And then if they can get the 2 pair, we go to 3 pair and 4 pair and try and blow it up like that. Or even just like, what town are we in? Or we ask them, let's play a game of how many animals can we name? I'll name an animal, you name an animal, and we go back and forth, or something like that. Or we'd have them write letters to their family, because doing handwriting is very stimulative to the brain. You have to concentrate, and apparently typing on a keyboard is not. So it's much better to do with a hand. And what family's not going to want a handwritten letter from their grandma, right? So, or we'll print out Bible verses and just have them copy that or something, just to keep them occupied. We also try to get them out in the sunshine after breakfast. Even in Arizona in the summer, we'll get them out for 10 or 15 minutes, just to get that morning light, try and reset their circadian rhythm, that kind of thing. Lunch is around 11:30 or so, 11:30. That consists of mostly meat and low carb veggies. We eat a lot of steak, a lot of burgers. All of us have apps on when there's sales on meat at the grocery store, and then we go and just clear it out. And we have freezers in the garages of our homes that we fill up. And then dinner's lighter. It might be like a beef stew or something like that. And we try to do that about 4:30 to 5, because we want to get 14, 15 hours of them basically fasting before breakfast the next day. That Dr. Bredesen recommends 3 hours before bed you stop eating for dementia, and try and keep them in ketosis. So that's what we try to do. And also, when you sleep, it's a lot better to be having your body heal during sleep than digesting. So we want to get that food out of their gut with a couple hours digestion before they go to bed. Let's see, they normally, we don't have like hard bedtime that everyone has to go to bed, but generally I'd say they go to bed around 7 to 8 to 9, somewhere in there. We have like a shift. Our caregivers work 12-hour shifts. So the daytime caregivers get off about 7, and they're generally trying to get them in their rooms in bed. So, because we only have one caregiver at night. So we don't want to have them have to put everyone to bed. So during the shift change, that's kind of when we sort of encourage them to go to bed. But we do have some people who stay up later, and then the single caregiver will put them to bed as well.
So I have a couple questions. The big one for me is, when you, as a real estate investor, invested in these properties, did you have any idea that you would get so invested in the people that you were housing?
No, not at all. I mean, when I ran rental properties, I got to be friends with a bunch of my tenants, but there would be, I don't know, a month or 2 would go by before I went back to the property if there were no maintenance problems, or, something the tenant was complaining about, or something like that. With this, I'm at every property 3 or 4 times a week at least. I mean, I have to split up my time between the properties, but I'm at a property almost every day. And when I was renting to college kids, they didn't want me around. I'd have to, hey, what's that funny smell I smell in this house? That smell needs to go away. But the elderly people, they thrive on people spending time with them, whether it's me, whether other families bring in their grandkids, whether families bring in pets. Dogs are huge fans. We actually we had a deal with a local rescue service, and we fostered dogs in one of our homes for a while to just because the residents loved it. But unfortunately, that rescue went out of business during COVID. So we haven't been able to set that up again. But, they crave the attention because our society kind of puts elderly people on the shelf and, okay, you served your usefulness, go away now. And that's really hard on them, especially at a time when they need you the most. And these are the people who, built our civilization. They're the ones who came before us, who fought wars, who, invented all kinds of great things that we enjoy today. And it's time to pay them back. And that's how I look at it.
That's absolutely amazing. And it's sad. It's really sad but you see it all the time. Somebody will, even individually, not in a home, but somebody will get a diagnosis and they're just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to sit here and wait this out. And to have someone like you that's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And not only can get the person that lives in your homes to change their mind on how they can go about these days of their lives, this season in their life, but to get the families excited and to get the families on board as well is just incredibly impressive. I'm sure they can definitely feel the difference that they're being treated as an actual human and not someone that's just sitting out and waiting for the rest of their days. That's got to be a very notable difference. So with that, do you have like haters? do you have people that are coming to you and asking how you're doing what you're doing, or do you have people coming to you that are like, why are you doing this? This is silly. They're just supposed to sit there. You're just supposed to keep them comfortable until they finally pass away. Or do you have like a combination of both? Because I was hoping it'd be more people asking how they can also do what you're doing, but I have a feeling it's not always like that.
I do have other assisted living businesses starting to ask me about it. I've been on a couple of Zoom calls trying to help them out, things like that. And one of my favorites is I got a call from a lady in an assisted living in Utah that saw me on one of my podcasts and said, hey, I just want to let you know, after hearing what you said, I've organized a whole bunch of residents in our assisted living community, and we went to management and told them, you better start feeding us like this guy feeds his residents, or we're all moving out. And they're making some changes now. So it's great to see this grassroots, revolution, right? These old guys starting to rise up, fight the power. But I think there's a lot of momentum with like the big corporate assisted living facilities. What I get as feedback there is, well, we have these corporate food contracts. We can't deviate from them. That's a corporate decision. We serve what we're told, and which is a shame. I think a lot of people in principle are interested in this, but I think that the system really fights it or is set up to be against it. We have Department of Health inspectors come in at least once a year and inspect and go through all our records and things like that. And I had one say, wow, your residents are doing really well. They're all walking around and, they're not bedbound and comatose and everything. And I go, yeah, you want to know how I'm doing that? And they said to me, no, that's okay. We're just here for the compliance aspect. We're just making sure you're good with regulations. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be good if the regulations led to good outcomes? Like, what's the purpose of having these regulations if you don't have that? So that's what I'm talking about, the system. Or one of the things we test for in dementia is hormones, for example. And you see a lot of people with dementia have horrible hormones, like basement, especially ladies who, go through menopause, have hysterectomies, things like that. And so I asked my mobile doctor, when we had a lady like that, hey, we need to do some hormone therapy or get her hormones way up. And the doctor's like, whoa, no, no, no. You give old ladies hormones, they get breast cancer. And the consulting company I went to them and said, what do we do? And they're like, check your email. And they sent me like all these studies that show that's a myth. Hormones don't really do that. The only way you might get it is if you had a history of breast cancer, but even though then the risk isn't so great. And so I laid those all out in front of the doctor and go, look at this. And she said, I understand. I kind of agree with you, but my insurance company will not allow me to do this and keep my malpractice insurance. And so it's the standard of care. A doctor can, let's take statins, regardless of what you think of statins. If a doctor prescribes statin to you and have a heart attack, and you have a heart attack, that doctor's, well, I did what is a standard of care. That's what I'm supposed to do. No lawsuit. If I think statins are BS and I take you off statins and you have a heart attack, now lawsuit incoming. So the system is set up. I don't think anyone hates making people healthier. I think the problem is the way we go about it and what we try to prohibit because there's so, of the risks. Well, there's a guarantee that if I just feed you soda and ice cream and everything like that, you're going to suffer, right? But that's your choice to eat the soda and drink the soda and eat the ice cream, right? With the prescriptions, the doctors are going to get in trouble. And that's why you see people in assisted living on 20, 30 prescriptions. They've been through several doctors and no one wants to question the previous doctor. So we're just going to add to this. And, oh, you're having side effects? Well, here's another medication that'll fix that. So it's really, unfortunately, it's the system we have, and it's the assumption of liability. And I need to protect myself against lawsuits. So regardless of what your outcome is, I need to make sure that I'm okay. And I need to do a treatment that, pays higher than this other treatment too. So I think that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I'm a non-compliant patient from way back. I haven't taken any statins. And,
awesome.
Yeah. So I
try to get my residents off statins every chance I get.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with people with dementia, because there's definitely an association there. So I think we're all doing this, right? Like we're all like, how do we fight this system? And you're shining an example on how it can be done. But I mean, and people are seeing it. Obviously, we're talking to you today, and you have been on several other podcasts, and now you have other places contacting you. But how do you envision fighting the system and changing the system?
Well, I was extremely excited that Robert F. Kennedy got nominated as the Health and Human Service Secretary. I mean, to me, the biggest way to fight this is shine a light on it. I think one of the biggest problems with healthcare is the HIPAA law. I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but it basically is a law saying we have to zealously protect people's medical records. And I totally understand there's a reason for that. You don't want air your dirty laundry in public. But I mean, this thing goes crazy. Like, you can't email to the doctor anything about anyone's medical conditions. We have to use faxes. I mean, you'd think the fax machine was obsolete. Well, it's alive and well in the medical world because you can't hack a fax machine, or else no one's found out a way to do it yet. So, that protection of medical records means that you don't get out success stories. You don't get out, well, I took this drug and I had a problem with it. I tried this thing and it really hurt my back, this therapy or whatever. You get sort of generic news and stuff like that, but there's not a comprehensive, hey, this stuff's really bad for you. Obviously a lot of companies who have products don't want that kind of news going out either. But I think it's just, everything's got to be so secretive that we don't get the good news of what works and what doesn't. And I think what really drove me down this path was I'd see those Department of Health inspectors come in and they'd like focus like a laser on all the prescriptions, and are we giving the right dosages at the right time, and they go through the pill box and see, okay, we've got our Metaset for the week. Do I have the right ones? And they'd spend hours doing that. For the food, they'd look and see if I have a menu posted. I could put anything on that menu. Now if I put M&Ms and ice cream on every day, they'd be like, you might want to do something different. But they don't, that's all they care about. Or activities. Do you have a calendar of activities posted that the residents know what's coming up in their families? So, and when I get, a trainer in, I have to have a doctor say, a prescription for exercise and stuff like that. So they don't care so much about the stuff that I can change that can make a huge effect. So that's what gave me the latitude to do what I'm doing. I can't change prescriptions. If a doctor says, give them this, I have to give them that. I can talk to the doctor and say, I'd rather not. Can we do something different? But at the end of the day, when the doctor says, give them this, like a doctor can prescribe beer or tequila, right? As long as they have a prescription for it, they can have it. I've had residents in my home that the wife is like, oh, my husband always has a beer before bed. And so the doctor writes out a prescription and then we give him a beer before bed. Yeah. So I swear, I joke with the health people. I'm like, my residents could be snorting cocaine if they had a prescription for it. So it's just a really weird system.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That's hilarious. That's what I'm going to write down for in my medical history. I will need a shot of tequila before bed, dear doctor.
Yeah.
Hal, do you have, this is probably a little bit of an unfair question, but is there a resident that sticks out to you? I know there's one resident of yours that sticks out to me, but do you have a couple of, or one special story that really just overflows your heart with gratitude?
My biggest success story is a lady who came to me, moved down to my homes from Seattle, who, when she came to us, she was about 30 pounds overweight. She walked with a cane. She was, I think, 72, something like that. Was diagnosed with dementia, had tremors in her hands, and she wholeheartedly embraced everything. She did a carnivore diet. We had to go through a couple iterations because at first she's like, no way. But by the time she left, she was wholeheartedly into it. We put her in some hyperbaric oxygen treatments. We did red light therapy. She did saunas followed by a cold shower right after the sauna. And then she worked at a lot of brain games and things like that. Her dementia score on something called a MoCA test, which is what they use to determine dementia. It's out of 30, it's just a one-page test, answer questions kind of thing. And she went from a 15, anything below 20 is dementia when she first came to us, to like 7 months later, she scored a 26, which is practically in the normal range. She's living on her own in an apartment in Seattle now, and she's trying to figure out a way to move down to Arizona to help us with other people. So a tremendous story. And she's like full on keto carnivore, eating that now, exercises every day, is amazing. I have another lady that I just love. She grew up in Nicaragua, and when she was a kid, there was a lot of lice problems, in the kids' hair. And the way they treat lice was they dip a cloth in insecticide, and then they'd wrap it around their heads, the kids' heads, like a turban, and have this insecticide just sit on their head all day long. I'm thoroughly convinced that's why she has dementia now. And so what was neat was when she came to us, she scored a 13 on the test at first. She's now scoring around 18. And she's saying stuff like she went out with her family, and I can't remember the guy's name, but she said her family took her out to get like a new dress or something like that. And she said, she walked her strutted around all confident and said, "This dress makes me look like," and said this guy's name. And it was a Nicaraguan baseball player from the 1950s. She'd never mentioned this guy to her family before, but when we all looked it up, it was like he was like a national hero in Nicaragua. He got to move up to play in the minor leagues in the United States because he was really good, and almost made it to the major leagues. And every kid wanted to be this guy because he was so famous. And now she's saying stuff to me like, "Hey, I think this is the weekend to set my clock ahead for daylight savings time," which doesn't happen in Arizona, but she's actually from another state. So I was like, "You know that?" She's like, "Yeah, why?" I'm like, "Because you wouldn't remember that, a couple of months ago." So it's neat to see that. She has conversations with her family where she remembers what we did during the day, things like that. And it just, you see that kind of stuff and you just think, wow, this is so awesome to see.
That is what a reward.
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
like that's just better than any kind of it's better than any raise I feel like you could ever get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you feel like, all right, maybe I'm doing what God wants me to do. God,
Yes. Now,
maybe I got a shot at heaven after all.
That's right. Make it a little space.
Right.
If I could ask about my favorite story, at least that I've seen so far. His name is Mark.
Yeah, I love
He
Mark.
is my absolute, I literally stand up and cheer every time I see you post something about him on Twitter. And can you just tell us just a brief little smidgen about his story?
Sure, I'd love to talk about Mark.
God,
Mark is an amazing guy. Mark came to us from sort of a foster care home. He was in his late 50s, early 60s. He had a high school football injury that put him in a wheelchair when he was about 15 or 16. He's been in a wheelchair for about 45 years. When he came to us, he was in the wheelchair, and but he just had this amazing attitude that, it doesn't bother me. He's got like a speech impediment too. I don't know what his background. He doesn't really share it, and I didn't want to get into it, but I think he's had a rough childhood. I know he was moved from foster care home to foster care home in his wheelchair for his growing up and everything, but he just couldn't be happier as a guy. And I kept talking about what we can do. Like when I bring people in to do a tour of the home and we'd walk by Mark would say, "This is the best home in the whole world. You need to move in here." And I'd always joke like, "Yeah, Mark, I'll pay you your sales commission, after they leave." But it just couldn't, like, everything's great for him all the time. And so when I looked into these diets, he was a lot overweight and everything. I said, "Would you be willing to try this?" And so we put him on a carnivore diet, and he's lost 60 pounds on it. And so then we started thinking, well, maybe he can start walking again, because we could see him start moving his feet and everything. And so I bought some parallel bars, and he's been working at it. He does squats. We've got a trainer working with him all the time. And recently he's been able to get up on the parallel bars. He does squats into his wheelchair from the bars, and he's been able to stand on his own, first time in 45 years. So it's just a huge story, and we just love it. We just took him to a spring training baseball game last weekend, and he just loved that. He's a big fan of sports. I have some volunteers from a local church that take him to high school football games and things like that. And now he can get in the car very easily. Lots of great stuff happening with him. And my trainer's completely convinced he can walk again. So stay tuned. I'll try to keep you updated as we make that progression.
Oh, go Mark. I love
Yeah.
it so much. He just seriously watching that. I look for it all the time on Twitter to see if is there any Mark update.
I'll make sure we do more of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you've given him, I would think after so many years, maybe being shuffled around, you've given him a purpose. Like he's
Right.
gotten something to work towards now. And maybe
Yeah.
he's never had that before.
Yeah. No, I love going in there and go, Mark, you got 3,000 likes on this post. Look at this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
We definitely want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you for, I don't know, 12 hours.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. So what, compared to being a pilot for a major airline,
Mhm.
and you put this, would you have ever dreamed this is where you would be? And if you could compare the two, would you think this is definitely what I should be doing? Or I wish I was still an airline pilot making all that darn money.
I hate to say it, but when I was an airline pilot, I wasn't happy. I felt really like a bus driver. I mean, what I loved about being a pilot was other pilots. I mean, pilots are some of the goofiest, funniest people I've ever met. And they're the guys who played sports in high school and gals too. I've flown with some phenomenal women too. Just people I loved hanging out with. That's what sold me on the Air Force Academy when I went there. Like, these are the kind of people I hung out with as buddies in high school. They're everywhere on this campus. And I loved military flying. It was really exciting, fun stuff. But yeah, I didn't feel like I was, is this all I'm doing for the rest of my life kind of thing. In fact, when I was a pilot, I sat reserve. I know you know what that is, Natalie. And so I was only flying like 8 days a month, which sounds fantastic. With free airline travel, I can go wherever I want the other 20 days. But A, you're sitting reserve, so you can't go anywhere. And B, I was bored out of my mind and was like, my wife constantly was like, you need a hobby. you stop bugging me. I don't like you around all the time. So this is, I'm a guy who likes to do stuff, and there's all kinds of challenge and all kinds of opportunity in doing this. And when you get, when I get feedback as a pilot, I'd get, maybe nice landing or thank you, just a quick thing like that. Here it's like, you changed my mom's life, or I can't believe what my dad's doing, that kind of thing. And it just, you just feel amazing hearing that kind of stuff.
It's funny that you say that about being a pilot, because I'm a retired flight attendant, and I will never forget my first trip. I bent down to get somebody a Coke, out of the thing. And I thought, oh my God, is this what I'm going to be doing? This is what I chose to do how did we get here?
Right.
So I totally get what you mean. I was not happy as a flight attendant. I loved the experience. I loved the cruise. I loved the passengers most of the time. But I knew that there's something more that I wanted to fulfill my heart with, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a first officer. I had never made it long enough to be a captain. And the captains I flew with, they were all divorced, sometimes multiple times. They all were like, this was their second or third airline they were with. They were all bitter, unhappy. And I thought, is that me in 20 years?
Yeah. And most of the biggest question that flight attendants would get from pilots is, I'd like to have my meal at this time. And you're like, okay, my name's Natalie.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
Thanks for introducing me.
Yeah. No, I met wonderful people on the airlines. I don't want to disparage them at all. Yeah. It just wasn't for me. And I have all my, military pilot buddies are all airline pilots now. And they, they all have sort of, things they do on the side too. I mean, they love being a pilot. They love flying and everything like that. But I don't know. My wife said when you flew for the airlines, you were the unhappiest I've ever seen you. And now even when I'm stressed, you know, I got to fill some beds or something like that, or someone's not responding to what we're doing, I still am very happy. I don't feel like, oh, this is awful stress. I just feel like I, I I'm gonna fix this.
I totally agree. And there is nothing worse than being on reserve for the airlines. It's,
Yeah.
and for me, I was online with the airlines for 16 years, and I would say probably 9 on and off on reserve. Like it was a
Oh
hard
wow.
life. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Especially if you're in reserve in a place that's not a hub. Like you had to commute
exactly.
to be on reserve.
Yeah. And we had 2 hours to get there. So you always had
Right.
to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. So,
Yeah. I don't miss that at all.
oh, so I would think that this life, that this passion that's led you to the life you have now is much more fulfilling than
Yeah.
that.
It's a lot more work than flying, but boy, it's fulfilling, like you say. As
Well,
probably you
before the
are with
two
the
of you
podcast.
nerd out too long, I want we're gonna have to land this plane.
Good one, Robyn.
I made it funny.
Yeah.
But we do want to be respectful of your time. So Hal, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, because really service has clearly been a major part of your life. You served our country, and now you're serving a population that is severely underserved, and we need more people like you out there. So I really just appreciate everything that you're doing, and I hope more people hear from you and start to follow the example that you've been setting. And
Thanks.
so since we're about to close up, before we go, where can people find you and connect with you?
Sure. My website is aparadiseforparents.com. Make sure you put an A at the front. And then I'm on Twitter just with my name at Hal Cranmer. I try to contain my sarcasm sometimes. I have a Facebook and Instagram. The Facebook is Assisted Living Hal Cranmer, or Assisted Living, A Paradise for Parents Assisted Living. And then the Instagram is Assisted Living Hal Cranmer. I'm not as good as posting on Facebook as Instagram. I do more on the Twitter thing, but and then our website. And then I try and get on great podcasts. So just Google me and you'll find stuff about me, I'm sure.
Yes. And thank you so much again. It's been an incredible conversation.
It's been wonderful, Natalie and Robyn. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing to spread the word too, because it can help so many people.
And that's why we're here. We want to tell everybody's story. We do ask one final question from all of our guests. And this is our first question as Ketobiography. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you, what is the key insight you would want to share that would help others write their Ketobiography?
I would say be a lifelong learner. Whatever you're interested in, research it with a passion, and don't think it's just classes. You learn from everything every day. Every person I've ever met has been able to teach me something. My enlisted guys, my flying squadron in the Air Force, used to have a poster on the wall that said, "There's no one so useless that they can't serve as a bad example," which I think is a little extreme, but you get the point. You can still learn from people. You can learn from the internet. You can learn from TV. You can learn from just your day-to-day experiences. And you know, at the end of the day, think, okay, what happened to me today, and what could I do better tomorrow? You know, but I think the learning never stops, and it just, I've learned so much with this assisted living journey, and the people that come in, and the conditions they have, and the clinicians that I contacted when they do have a problem, that I found, okay, this guy's an expert in whatever. Social media, everyone disparages it, but boy, there's a ton of good information on social media. You just have to sort through the bad stuff. So my biggest insight would be, find something you're really passionate in and learn something about it every day.
Be a lifelong learner. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hal, again, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope we get to talk to you again and hear about more success stories from your homes. I love it. On behalf of Robyn, our guest Hal Cranmer, and myself, thank you for hearing our keto biography.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.